I want you to go back with me for just a second. I'm sitting at a huge conference table on the 50th floor of a Manhattan conference, or a Manhattan skyscraper. Over my shoulder is a billion-dollar view of Central Park. Sitting across from me are 8 attorneys dressed in their best power suits. They're employed by one of the world's largest law firms. But in this room right now, they work for me. How many of you out there have ever questioned if people who have it all together ever wonder if they are making the right choice, or maybe even ever get stuck by the ambiguity in front of them? I see several hands. Mine are both up. Kate Wilshute, CFO of a venture capital firm in DC, and one of the most humble people you could ever meet, told me that there is no exact roadmap. You just have to take that leap of faith and trust you have the experience to make the decision. You know that Manhattan conference room I mentioned? I hope so, because that was just a second ago. I was 26 and way outside my comfort zone. I mustered the confidence to sit in front of those 8 attorneys on a regular basis. Half the time, though, they sat there with their arms folded, skeptical that what I was asking them to do was even possible. We argued, and we went round and round over a period of 18 months, debating the finer points of international contracts and banking regulations. It was overwhelming. I would collapse with exhaustion after nearly every conversation. But they never knew that. I did it scared. And looking back, it was some of the most fun that I've ever had professionally. But you know what? I didn't know if what I was asking them to do really was possible. It was a series of informed, confident guesses on my part. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. But we built something together despite that ambiguity. I spoke to a number of leaders as I was preparing for today, and it turns out that I guess this topic is pretty polarizing. It probably makes sense that when I go in and tell people that none of us know what we're doing, the reactions of these leaders is probably going to be a little mixed. Some people shut down and didn't really want to talk anymore. They weren't even sure if they agreed with what I was talking about at all. Others were really open and happy to share their stories. Those are the ones I'm going to reference today. Vulnerability is hard. It's not easy to flip that switch that says we have to have it all together all the time, that we have to be poised constantly. But I think that's all the more reason we need to be talking about it. Can we just be honest with each other? None of us know what choice to make, what path to take, how to get from A to Z. We're all just making it up as we go. Sure, we're learning and we're getting better, but we're still having to make choices that aren't clear. It's not what any of us want to say out loud or admit to one another, but we're only human beings, even in a professional setting. It's not easy for any of us to say that. We have no way of knowing where a choice will lead. That's just biology. That's human nature. That's reality. But we do get to make the choice. Let's relish that. Even at the height of his career as the CEO of a bank and as a Secretary of Commerce for the state of Oklahoma, Sean Copeland told me that there's never been a point where he's felt like he's made it. He said he's certainly gotten more comfortable in his roles and that the anxiety does go away, which is good to know. But that there are still moments where he feels like he's playing grown-up. He recounted a recent example where he was sitting in a boardroom with a number of executives, and still, as he was scanning the room, even him, that small voice inside, said, "Are you sure this is the room you're supposed to be in?" I guess it happens to everybody. I get to speak to students quite a bit, and the one question without fail that I'm going to get asked is, how do you get from this classroom seat to where you are today, to this stage, as the case is? The answer? Keep going. There is no formula, no rule book, no single piece of wisdom that's going to get any of us through life. We listen, we learn, we accumulate experience, but at the end of the day, we're all just trying to do the best we can. We're all just trying to become the best versions of ourselves. And I'm standing here today because I've executed a couple things, not because I have any more answers. All that any of us can hope to do is to guess forward. Now, I've written 3 books. If you want to applause, that's okay. You can clap. Thank you. I appreciate that. The writing part, surprisingly, though, was the easy piece. Then comes the editing. You want to feel like a failure at anything you've ever tried in life? Let somebody read the first draft of your book. And nobody's going to be more honest about it than your family. I love you, Mom. It's rough. And the reason it's rough is that it starts to become real. At that point, you don't get to hide behind the screen anymore. People are starting to see your inner thoughts, ideas, and perspectives. It's a whole other level of vulnerability. It's also a really good metaphor for life. Like in life, as you move forward, as you execute decisions, you have to own the choices that you're making. You have to own the guesses. There's really no way around that. And sure, the third book was easier to write than the first one, but it was still painful and vulnerable and obscure. I recently picked up each of the books and flipped through them before I came here, and I'm going to be honest with you. Some of the stuff I wrote, especially in the earlier books, was not amazing. There's no regret in that for me, though. It's part of the story. It's part of realizing that for me, moving forward despite having no idea what I'm doing is the story of my life, the story of yours. Each of us seek clarity in life. We all want to know what that one right path is that's going to lead to personal happiness and professional success. Bill Burnett and Dave Evans, who are rock star professors at Stanford, wrote a phenomenal book called Designing Your Life, which I highly recommend. This is what they have to say about that one right path. It's kind of long, but bear with me. Working with adults of all ages, we've found that where people go wrong, regardless of their age, education, or career path, is thinking they just need to come up with a plan for their lives, and it will be smooth sailing. If only they make the right choice, the best, true, only choice, they'll have a blueprint for who they'll be, what they'll do, and how they'll live. It's a paint-by-numbers approach to life, but in reality, life is more of an abstract painting, one that's open to multiple interpretations. So where does this leave us? Paralyzed in the ambiguity of life being a series of guesses, that abstract painting, or full of hope and energized that we get to make the choices. We get to choose the path, the steps, the journey to creating the life that we want. Tom LeBlanc, the president of George Washington University, shared with me that finite progress will eventually yield results. More often than not, we probably know the first couple steps we need to take. It's when we try to look at the whole picture that we get overwhelmed. If we can take the first step and then build toward the next one, the series of steps that has to be taken doesn't seem so scary anymore. Sean told me that as you learn from your mistakes, as you walk through your failures, we've all had them, we all will have them, you can't help but get better at pushing through the ambiguity. This means that your story, your path, your journey, your experience become the guidebook that we're all so desperately seeking. Learn from it, press into it. In their book, Burnett and Evans also share with us that a well-designed life is generative. It's always growing, adapting, evolving, changing. And it's always open to the possibility of surprise. This is the point. Not getting stuck or overwhelmed in the unknown, but embracing the climb, embracing the hairy guesses and the obscure decisions. You get to choose the path. You get to say, I see you, ambiguity, but you're not going to stop me. I'm going to switch gears now. That was a little intense, wasn't it? I'm going to switch gears here now and talk about some tips and tools that we can use to start implementing some of these things. The first tip I want to share is to write down your thoughts. As I've spoken to a number of leaders I respect, a theme has emerged around being guided by your own experience. This makes sense. All of the guessing that we keep talking about will not be so overwhelming if we can look back at our own thoughts, ideas, and perspectives along the way. And as Sean mentioned earlier, the anxiety will start to dissipate if we can build a track record of moving forward despite the unknown. Any book you read about George H.W. Bush is going to talk about or maybe even include excerpts from his extensive writing. It was letters to his friends, notes to his kids, personal journal entries. Everything seemed really reflective. It was about his decisions, his reasons for them, the ramifications of them. As I've started to implement this reflective and creative writing process into my own life over the last several years, I can say how valuable it's been. Being able to go back and look at decision points and understand, how have I grown from that, out of that? Or maybe how have I regressed because of it, is so helpful. It's not just about your cognitive memories, it's about your spiritual and your emotional memories as well, which really seem to come out when you write something down. I looked back at a number of things I'd written in preparation for today, and it was so helpful to see the journey play out, the ups and the downs, in a way that wasn't necessarily at the forefront of my mind. So this is the challenge. Look back at your own story. What inspired you? What challenged you? How did you feel in those moments? What do you enjoy or not enjoy? What gives you energy? What drains your energy? Use your own experience as a guide. Second tip I want to talk about is to find your voice. In their book, Burnett and Evans also share with us that there are multiple great lives within each of us, but that we individually get to choose which one to move forward to. I'm walking through this now in many ways. I have a tendency to be extremely loyal and sometimes take on too much. I'm a little burnt out, to be honest with you. I've said yes to certain things over and over again that don't necessarily reflect my voice in its purest form. To borrow a real estate term, what is my highest and best use to the world, to those around me, even to myself? If I'm truly willing to answer that question and then walk it out, I can become the best version of me. Another sort of private revelation that I've had as I'm walking this out is that I am meant to be a creator of vision, a builder, a leader. Now, I want you to know that that's not easy for me to say out loud because it doesn't sound very humble, which is a core value for me. And it's not that I haven't led in some very real and tangible ways over the years, but I'm working now to walk that out, to own that in a new way, to make sure that every choice reflects my voice. So what is your voice? Lean into that question. Now, the third tip I want to talk about is to invest in people. I asked Lance Humphreys, a serial entrepreneur here in Oklahoma, what one piece of advice he would give to his 21-year-old self. His answer? Who you're around is a lot more important than what you're doing, especially in the early formative days of your career. Now, Lance has a 23-year-old son and a 21-year-old daughter. This is sage wisdom for them, but also for us, no matter our age. Ask questions, listen, invest in relationships with both peers and mentors. Seek wisdom from those who came before. There is something special that happens when you get into a room, a one-on-one conversation with a mentor. There's going to be a greater degree of humility and vulnerability than you're ever going to find in a group setting. I can speak to this firsthand. There is a special element when you take and invest the time and the energy into seeking a mentor and then listening to his or her counsel. They're not going to teach you about themselves, but about yourself. Kate Wilshutz told me that in the early days of her career, she didn't really understand how much she would rely on her peers for guidance, for practical support, even for career advancement. She says she wished she'd networked with those peers a little bit more because that truly is where your next job comes from. So don't take for granted the wisdom of the peers sitting next to you and the wisdom of the leaders you aspire to be. Both are invaluable resources that will make the guessing bearable. Make a big investment in people. Now, the fourth tip that I want to share is to cut yourself some slack. Chill. CTFO. I'll tell some of you later what that means. Stop worrying. There is no wrong step if it's a forward step. Kate told me that as she's progressed in her career, she's realized that as you trust yourself, as you execute, as you make choices, there's also enough space to clean up any ill-informed decisions you might have made along the way. That's good to know. Woo! Moving forward is what matters. I'm about as type A as you can get. Stop laughing, my family's laughing. I'm always focused on the future. I'm always wanting greater clarity, probably like everybody else listening. Everything I'm saying today is as much for me as it is for you. But it's reflective of my journey and my experience and where I'm at right now. Some of the things I'm saying probably would have been laughable if you'd known me 10 years ago. To chill out, to keep guessing, that I don't know what I'm doing. But as I've gotten older, as I've gained more experience, I can honestly say that, to borrow that cliche phrase, life really is about the journey. Working harder and faster and longer isn't necessarily going to make things any more clear. And that's okay. There really is beauty in the unknown, in the process, in the journey. And I don't stand here and say that to you lightly, because it has taken a lot of time and work and energy to get to this place. But here I am. And maybe you're way ahead of me, or maybe you're also on this journey. But the view's pretty amazing when we can stop fighting the current known as reality. So one more tip that I think I really want you to write down, I want you to take with you. I think it's something that reflects my voice. See what I did there? Get off your ass and make a decision, because it will never be clear. Ambiguity is a fact of life. It's not what any of us want to hear, but it's the truth. Move forward even when you're scared. No, maybe especially when you're scared. Have fun. Enjoy the people around you. Enjoy the process taking place around you. Embrace the ups and the downs. Both are a part of the game. Toward the end of their book, Burnett and Evans share this quote with us. You never finish designing your life. Life is a joyous and never-ending design project of building your way forward. It all really does work out. Thank you. Thank you.